The Ottoman Empire is one of the most formidable and lasting empires in history. Spanning over 6 centuries, the Ottomans' influence reached from the gates of Vienna in the west to the steppes of Central Asia in the east. But how did this empire rise from modest beginnings to become one of the most powerful entities in the world? This is the story of how one empire ruled for 600 years, leaving a legacy that is still felt today. The beginnings. A small tribe in Anatolia. The origins of the Ottoman Empire can be traced back to a small Turkic tribe in the Anatolian region, led by Osman I, from whom the empire gets its name. In the late 13th century, the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum was on the decline, and the Byzantine Empire was fragmented, offering opportunities for expansion. Amidst this chaos, Osman I founded the Ottoman dynasty around 1299, a date often cited as the formal beginning of the empire. Osman I's initial successes were the result of both military prowess and strategic alliances. He cleverly capitalized on the weakness of the neighboring empires, particularly the Byzantines and the Mongols, as well as the growing influence of the Turks in Anatolia. By 1326, Osman's son, Orhan, captured the city of Bursa, which would become the first major capital of the Ottoman Empire. This victory marked the Ottomans as a rising power in the region. The expansion. A strategic empire. The 14th and 15th centuries were pivotal for the Ottomans. Under Murad I, the Ottomans extended their reach, establishing dominance over the Balkans. By the mid-14th century, they had conquered large swaths of the Balkans, establishing themselves as a major force in the eastern Mediterranean. Murad I also implemented military reforms that transformed the Ottoman army into one of the most formidable fighting forces of the era. He created the Janissaries, a special corps of elite soldiers composed mainly of Christian boys, taken as part of the Devshirme system, which recruited soldiers through forced Christian child conscription. Murad's successor, Bayezid I, known as the Thunderbolt, continued the empire's expansion. In the early 15th century, Bayezid sought to extend Ottoman control over the eastern Mediterranean and Central Europe, and during his reign, the Ottomans faced several critical challenges, including Timur's invasion of Anatolia. Bayezid was defeated at the Battle of Ankara in 1402, temporarily halting Ottoman expansion. However, the empire was soon able to recover under the leadership of Bayezid's son, Mehmed I, and the Ottomans quickly regained their strength. The rise of Mehmed II, the fall of Constantinople. The turning point in Ottoman history came with the ascension of Mehmed II to the throne in 1444. His reign is perhaps the most significant in the empire's long history, primarily because of his conquest of Constantinople in 1453. The fall of Constantinople was not only a military triumph, but also a symbolic death blow to the Byzantine Empire. Constantinople, with its strategic location, had long been the last bastion of the ancient Roman Empire. Mehmed, however, saw the city as a gateway to further conquest in Europe, Asia, and Africa. After a lengthy siege that lasted nearly 2 months, Mehmed II breached the city's formidable walls and entered Constantinople, renaming it Istanbul. This victory gave the Ottomans a crucial foothold in Southeast Europe, Asia Minor, and the Mediterranean, transforming the Ottomans into a world power. The fall of Constantinople also had far-reaching consequences for Europe. It marked the end of the Middle Ages and the beginning of the Renaissance, as the Ottomans controlled the vital land routes to Asia, effectively blocking European trade with the East. This led to the Age of Exploration, as European powers sought new sea routes to India and the Far East. The empire at its height. Suleiman the Magnificent. After Mehmed II's death, the Ottoman Empire continued to expand under successive sultans, but it was Suleiman I, also known as Suleiman the Magnificent, who would bring the empire to its zenith. Suleiman ascended to the throne in 1520, and under his rule, the empire became the world's preeminent power. Suleiman not only expanded Ottoman territories, but also instituted reforms in law, administration, and culture. He was a talented military commander, extending Ottoman borders further into Europe, including the conquest of large parts of Hungary and establishing Ottoman influence over much of the Balkans. His forces also reached the gates of Vienna in 1529, although they were repelled by the Habsburgs. Internally, Suleiman is remembered for his legal reforms. He enacted the Kanun, a set of laws that restructured the administration of the empire and sought to unify it under a single legal system. His patronage of the arts, architecture, and sciences brought the empire to new heights of cultural achievement. The famous Süleymaniye Mosque in Istanbul, designed by architect Mimar Sinan, remains a symbol of Ottoman architectural brilliance. The decline from greatness to stagnation. However, after Suleiman's death in 1566, the Ottoman Empire began a long period of decline. While the empire still possessed immense power, the leadership failed to maintain the cohesion and military strength of earlier periods. Successive sultans were often weak, and the empire became increasingly bureaucratic and corrupt. As the empire expanded, it became harder to manage its vast territories. Additionally, the empire faced new challenges from European powers, particularly the Habsburg Empire, which began to challenge Ottoman dominance in the Balkans. The rise of the Russian Empire in the east and the growing influence of European colonial empires further destabilized Ottoman power. The 17th century saw military defeats, such as the loss at the Battle of Lepanto in 1571 to a coalition of European states. Though the Ottomans regained some strength in the following years, it marked the beginning of a steady decline in Ottoman power, as the empire's territories in Europe were gradually lost to the Habsburgs, Russia, and Austria. By the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire was often referred to as the sick man of Europe. Economic decline, military defeats, and the growing nationalism of its subject peoples contributed to the empire's gradual unraveling, the Tanzimat reforms and the decline of the empire. As the 19th century progressed, the Ottoman Empire faced increasing internal and external pressures. To modernize and catch up with the rapidly advancing European powers, the Ottomans embarked on a series of reforms known as the Tanzimat reforms, 1839-1876. These reforms aimed at restructuring the empire's military, legal, and administrative systems. However, they were largely ineffective due to corruption, the resistance of the conservative elite, and the empire's inability to keep pace with Europe's industrialization. One of the significant reforms during this period was the introduction of the Ottoman Constitution of 1876, which briefly created a parliamentary system. However, political instability, military defeats, and the increasing influence of foreign powers hindered these reforms. The empire was increasingly unable to maintain control over its territories as nationalist movements began to emerge in places like Greece, Serbia, Bulgaria, and Armenia. The Balkan Wars and World War I. The early 20th century saw the Balkan Wars, 1912-1913, in which the Ottoman Empire lost almost all of its remaining European territories. This was a devastating blow to the empire's prestige and territorial integrity. As the empire entered World War I on the side of the Central Powers, Germany and Austria-Hungary, it hoped to regain some of its former glory. However, the war exacerbated the empire's decline. The Ottoman military suffered a series of defeats during the war, and by 1918 the empire was on the brink of collapse. The Treaty of Sèvres in 1920 formally partitioned the empire, and the Turkish War of Independence led by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk resulted in the establishment of the Republic of Turkey in 1923, marking the official end of the Ottoman Empire. Legacy of the Ottoman Empire. Despite its fall, the legacy of the Ottoman Empire endures to this day. The Ottomans' cultural, architectural, and intellectual contributions left a lasting imprint on the regions they ruled. The legacy of Ottoman governance can still be seen in the Middle East, North Africa, and the Balkans, where Ottoman traditions in law, culture, and administration still influence the modern world. The Ottoman legal system, the Janissary Corps, and the contributions to science, art, and literature set the stage for the cultural and intellectual flowering of the region. The Ottoman architecture, from the grand mosques of Istanbul to the palaces and bridges across the empire, remains a monumental testament to the grandeur of this 600-year-long empire. Furthermore, the empire's multi-ethnic and multi-religious society, while often fraught with tension, provided a model for governance that in some ways influenced modern ideas of citizenship, national identity, and secularism. Conclusion: the end of an era, but not of its influence. The Ottoman Empire's 6th-century reign was marked by both remarkable achievements and catastrophic decline. From a small principality in Anatolia to a global empire that spanned 3 continents, the Ottomans' rise and fall is a testament to both the fragility and resilience of empires. Its fall paved the way for the modern Middle East, and the history of the Ottoman Empire continues to be a powerful force in shaping the region today. The Ottomans, in their time, ruled over an empire that was a symbol of power, military might, cultural richness, and political intrigue. Though the empire is no more, its legacy lives on in the political, social, and cultural fabric of the modern world.